Let's go straight across to our big discussion for the day. Telecom and that very critical empowered group of ministers meeting that took place earlier in the day. We were expecting some key decisions to come out of it. What is it that the panel has finally decided, and what are the decisions that are still awaited? Who better than Arijit Banerjee to take us through all those details? Arijit, over to you.
Shweta, if you look at it, a few key issues being sorted out. The first, of course, the fact that the EGOM agreeing that the spectrum which will be auctioned will be a liberalized spectrum, which means that operators can use the spectrum for whatever service they want to use it for. Apart from that, the number of slots or the amount of spectrum that is going to be auctioned has been decided. About 10 megahertz, which will allow at least 8 of 1.25 megahertz each, which means about 2 new players can come in. If each of the new players will need minimum 5 megahertz to have a viable operation. Apart from that, 3.75 megahertz more in the 1800 megahertz band, so that even the existing players can bid for up to 2.5. So basically, 2 of the existing players can get spectrum, and about 2 of the new players. In total, about 13.75 megahertz in each circle will be available. This, of course, will be available after provisioning for spectrum for refarming. So that has also been decided that there will be provisioning kept for refarming. However, per se, how refarming will happen, what will be the process of refarming, when will it happen, all this has been delinked from this particular auction. So that is something which will be decided later, not now. So that could also be, will provide at least some sort of relief to the existing players, in the sense that the government will be open to listen to them on the issue of refarming. But overall, in principle, refarming will happen. That was the earlier Telecom Commission decision, and that will stay, but it will be dealing from the existing 1800 auction. However, the big issue of pricing is something, Shweta, which was not decided, because the impact analysis which the Telecom Commission has asked the Telecom Regulatory Authority to prepare in terms of tariff, in terms of industry absorbing the cost of the spectrum charges, as well as circle-wise impact. That is something which was still not prepared by TRAI. So it was something which did not come up for discussion before the empowered group of ministers. Very interestingly, also in the CDMA band, we are hearing 3 plus 1 slot, which means 1 existing player plus 1 new player can bid for spectrum. About 5 megahertz in total will be available. So there could be about 2 people or 2 slots available. Crucial, of course, for Systema, which is also in the CDMA spectrum band, or the 800 megahertz band. Back to you.
Right, so some relief there coming in, especially after those recommendations of the telecom regulator that were described as nothing short of being shocking by the operators. But let's start by discussing something that the ministers did not discuss, the pricing issue, because that's critical to you and me. It's critical to consumers, because telecom operators, remember, have been saying ever since those recommendations came out by the telecom regulator TRAI that be prepared to pay more. Your telecom bills, your mobile bills are all set to rise if those recommendations are accepted. How correct are those claims being made by the operators? Let's try and understand that. Mr. Rajan Matthews, operators have been absolutely in a state of shock ever since those recommendations came out by the telecom regulator. We've seen hectic lobbying take place on part of the telecom industry, a united stand which we'd perhaps never seen before, saying don't accept these recommendations. And the one thing they've been saying time and again is that telecom tariffs will rise. How correct are these claims? I know you have various studies and various other methodologies to tell us why they will rise, but tell us, why should they rise?
So it's a very simple process to understand. Previously, the industry had an absorption capability. And as a result of the years of continuous decline in prices, where we've even absorbed the inflationary effects, there's really no margin left to absorb anymore. So any increase in any of the significant inputs into the business has got to now get passed on to the consumer.
But I'd like to counter that charge. And I'd like to say that this is perhaps, many of your critics would actually say that this is just an excuse being put forward by the telecom operators. All that they're doing is they've enjoyed fantastic margins all this while, just because now they're being asked to pay more for spectrum, which is a scarce resource, and ultimately you have to realize the market value of that spectrum. They're simply not being able to take the fact that they have to shell out more. Kunal, I'd like you to respond, because I know everyone on this panel is on the side of the operators, but give us a more realistic picture. is what operators saying correct? And also I'd like to add here, we've seen all kinds of figures coming out from the operators. Someone saying telecom tariffs will go up by 10%, 20%, 100%, the 64 paisa, 20 paisa. We're very confused. Tell us the real picture.
Sure, absolutely. I'm not sure if I can tell you the exact number in terms of the real picture, but the simple fact of the matter is that if you're going to ask for additional capex, both in terms of spectrum as well as in terms of equipment, if you're going to do refarming, that cost needs to be absorbed somewhere. Now, either the operators can decide that they're going to absorb the entire cost and see whatever margins
they can absorb the cost,
but then their margins would disappear. I'm not saying that it's healthy for them.
Or they would reduce?
No, they would disappear, basically. Because, see, if we looked at margins 5 years ago, then one can say that, yes, the Indian telecom sector was very healthy. We had very good margins. We were benchmarked against margins of the leading telecom operators globally. But today, we're not in that position anymore. Our margins today in India with the telecom operators that we're seeing have consistently been declining. And we're actually seeing some operators who previously used to have circles and profit, where the circles are now going into losses.
Right.
So I think it is a concerning period in the history of the telecom industry, and really a turning point to decide, do we want to be able to nurture the industry and create policies that will see continued growth, or are you going to continue to squeeze the margins out and basically, because of forced competition or forced policy, basically see whatever margins are left really disappear?
Do you have the NDTV Profit app? All the markets, all the news and your own homemade, ready-made portfolio available there for you.
We will right now answer what you should sell, what you should buy when markets are down.
Download at ndtvprofit.com/apps. Get the best app from the channel you trust.